and you haven't been a copy, so have you been trying to use that to simplify your life? Next Friday. But anyway, so no one else that has a good voice. Since I'm not, I don't have a necessarily great voice.
Our artistic like the rest.
Oh, I see. So what do you do with that?
Do you want it? Oh, okay. I can buy that. Okay.
Words, and I'll just play it through for you.
Okay.
It's on that.
Well, but not enough.
Now you know it's yours, right? Oh yeah. So here's kind of the blessing. When you're doing that, this doesn't.
I think so. If I forget something, please wave at me. Because good morning. My name is to come. We strive for justice and fair relations with their descendants. I live out in the mountains by Canyon Ferry Dam.
Let's try that.
And I try not to say that it's my land, because I figure I'm just borrowing it from the native people that have wandered through there. They didn't live there, but they wandered through there a lot. So now Charlotte is going to come and light our chalice as we say together what's in our order of service. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. And I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I think, Bing Crosby, the Bing. Okay. Sing it. She went to get her. Charlotte's going to lead us in a shared reading in the Singing the Living Tradition number 606. It's called the Tao.
So 606, and Karen McLean is our pianist today, and thanks, Karen. I'm waiting till y'all get 606. Deep breath. So I'll read a part and then you respond where it's in italics. Before creation, a presence existed, self-contained, complete, formless, voiceless, mateless, changeless, which yet pervaded itself with unending motherhood.
Though there be no name for it, I have called it the way of life.
The word Tao means a way. Perhaps I should have called it the fullness of life, since fullness implies widening into space, implies still further widening, implies widening until the circle is whole.
In this sense, the way of life is fulfilled. Heaven is fulfilled. Earth is fulfilled. And a fit person also is fulfilled.
There are 4 amplitudes of the universe, and a fit person is one of them.
People rounding the way of earth. Earth rounding the way of heaven. Heaven rounding the way of life. Till the circle is full.
Okay, now it's time for our offering. I think Charlotte and Mariana said they'd help with that. We'll sing number 25 in the Open Your Heart Songbook. If you're visiting with us, please just be here with us. Your presence is a gift to us. A song for the kids, actually for us big kids too, one from my office that sometimes helps people be less anxious. And I thought it was kind of fitting for what I'm going to talk about because the invisible string can connect us all, even when we're not on the planet anymore. So if the kids want to come up, you can come up and sit up in front, and I'll try to read sort of upside down or sideways or something. So come on up. Your parents can bring you if you want them to. Okay, Charlotte's gonna hold it, thank you.
Those of us that can't hear.
Come on over.
Oh.
Maybe somebody else. Or not.
Come on, Eli. We can do it. Your mom will be with you. And Katie's coming too.
So this is the, oh,
Excuse me.
you're gonna join us too, huh, Shirley? The name of this book is The Invisible String. It's written by Patrice Karst and illustrated by Jeff Stevenson. The illustrations are they're sweet, but they're not beautiful, so I'm just gonna show them to the kids. Liza and Jeremy, the twins, were asleep one calm and quiet night. Suddenly, it began to rain really hard. Thunder rumbled until it got so loud that it woke them up. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried out as they ran to her. "Don't worry, you two. It's just the storm making all that noise. Go back to bed." "Oh, we want to stay close to you," said Jeremy. "We're scared." Mom said, "You know we're always together no matter what." "But how can we be together when you're out here and we're in bed?" said Liza. Mom held something right in front of them and said, "This is how." Rubbing their sleepy eyes, the twins came closer to see what Mom was holding. I was about your age when my mommy first told me about the invisible string. "I don't see a string," said Jeremy. "You don't need to see the invisible string. People who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love." "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" asked Liza. "Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it with your heart and know that you are always connected to everyone you love. When you're at school and you miss me, your love travels all the way along the string until I feel a tug at my heart. And when you tug it right back, we feel it in our hearts," said Jeremy. "Does Jasper the cat have an invisible string?" Liza asked. "Sure does," said Mom. "And best friends like me and Lucy?" asked Liza. "Best friends too." "How far can that string reach?" "Anywhere and everywhere," Mom said. "Would it reach me even if I were a submarine captain deep in the ocean?" asked Jeremy. "Yes," Mom said, "even there." "Or a mountain climber?" "Even there." "A ballerina in France?" "Even there." "A jungle explorer?" "Even there." "How about an astronaut in space?" "Yes, even there." "Does the string go away when you're mad at us?" "Never," said Mom. "Love is stronger than anger. And as long as love is in your heart, the string will always be there." Even when you get older and can't agree about things like what movie to see or what game to play in the back seat or what time to go to bed. "Oh, that, right. You two should be in bed." And with that, they laughed as Mom chased the twins back to their beds. Within a few minutes, they were asleep, even though the storm was still making the same loud noises. As they slept, they started dreaming of all the invisible strings they have, and all the strings their friends have, and their friends have, and their friends have, until everyone in the world was connected by invisible strings. No one is ever alone. There you go.
Journey as you journey. May you go. Peace and love go with you. Peace and love go with you. Learn and grow. Learn and grow.
Okay, now we're going to have one of my favorite hymns. I think I want it sung when maybe people gather and say goodbye to me. So Number 123 in your green hymnal, Spirit of Life. When I led my first service a long time ago, the feedback I got, I think it was from Bill, and he's right, and it's still the problem, Bill. Sometimes I talk too fast because I'm nervous. So somebody can wave at me if they think I'm talking so fast. Yeah, I can't process it.
The microphone keeps slipping.
All right.
So you stand still.
Okay. I should be able to do that. Okay.
Let's do this.
I'll try to pay attention to it. Okay. How's that right now? All right. Okay. Before I get started on the title of this talk, I want to say a little bit about messiness. I've done some writings about messiness and thought it might be what I'd talk about today. But the place I'm in my life right now is more about the fourth quarter that I'll explain later. My early fourth quarter, and my parents' late fourth quarter. But we are all messy. I mean, all of us. Me, you, whether it's a mistake, big or little, it's just an error, it's not a character flaw. Just being a human being on the planet trying to figure it out. Our mistakes are regular, and they're often. Nobody escapes. It's easier to notice the mistakes of others rather than our own. Somehow we believe pointing a finger at someone else lets us off the hook or brings a sense of relief. We are all in the messy group, from our neighbors to our president. Part of the remedy for our joint messiness is being kind and compassionate. First to ourselves, I believe, and then to others. Being kind and compassionate to one is like doing the same for everybody else on the planet. I say we're all messy pretty often at my office, and I don't think it fully registers with most people. The response is mostly like, yeah, of course. It makes sense. We all make mistakes. And I've said those exact words about important topics too. But it's an emotional relief if we fully embrace our messiness with compassion. Move beyond simple recognition that we're all flawed into a full-on embrace. When I picture the word embrace, I see something like a gentle hug. My arms around something or someone. Embracing our messiness is even more than acceptance. No perfection, just doing our best to do the right thing, accepting that we'll fail sometimes. I can smile at my human imperfections, but it wasn't easy getting to that smile. So why should we embrace our messiness? Because we're all one. Many spiritual and philosophical ideas talk about this. I conceptualize it as one word, capital A-L-L, capital O-N-E. It's a concept I still struggle to understand and fully grasp. It's as big as the universe because it includes the universe. Everything is connected from a single cell in my body to a tree in my yard and the one in Zambia and outward to a galaxy millions of miles away. We are like a fraction of a nanosecond and still an essential part of life and the cosmos. As is the homeless person across from my office, the annoying senator, the elder in a nursing home, and a baby crying alone in an orphanage. I am reassured that science has an idea about this. It's called quantum physics, which is equally as challenging to get my brain around. but it feels like a relief. What I'm talking about today is a specific kind of messiness. I love college football, not so much professional, but the energy in college football is electric and raw. Most Saturdays, like yesterday, football's on my TV playing in the background until the game gets interesting or someone is beating Ohio State. I went to college at Michigan State University, whose football team usually stinks. But anyone who has lived in Michigan can agree with, oh, how I hate Ohio State. And what is a Buckeye anyway? I was talking with a friend who was a couple years younger than me, and he asked about plans for the fourth quarter of our lives. I thought it was a good comparison. I framed myself as in the early fourth quarter, and my parents have probably already gone by the 2-minute warning. I gotta get my water. Last spring, a group of us got together and we talked about death and dying. We called it the D&D group. Not Dungeons and Dragons, but death and dying. And we wanted to increase the comfortability with talking about death. We wanted to do some practical things like, does everybody have their will or trust and their medical POA and all that stuff? One thing that we talked about was cleaning up our messiness. And in that context, we meant like, get rid of your stuff. This could be a real blessing to your children because I really understand that right now. But it also could be your neighbor. Sometimes a neighbor will have to jump in, or don't have to, but they do, jump in and clean up somebody's messiness. So, when I was in my early 20s, I think I was at a doctor's office, maybe with my older children. And I was sitting next to an older gentleman, I think he was in his 80s. And we were just having a conversation, and I said, what is the secret to growing old? And without even thinking about it, he said, stay flexible. And then as we talked about it, he meant in all kinds of ways. In your body, in your thinking, in your emotions, and in what we actually do. So, about my parents. First, I have a younger brother and sister. None of us are young, but they're younger than me. We may be frustrated, but we get along great. And from what I understand, that's not always the case. So I'm abundantly thankful for my brother and sister. My dad is 91, my mom is 90. They were born not long before the Great Depression, so they grew up with the idea of scarcity. They have lived in the same house for over 50 years. They've been married for over 70, though my siblings and I wonder how they did it or why. My dad's answer this last October was because in their own way, they love each other a lot. My dad isn't a very nice person, and he would agree, although we may mean different things. When I'm with them, I get my fill of Fox News, and mostly have agreed to not talk about politics. They are both believers. In the last couple of years, I have come to a more clear realization about my dad. It's not easy, even though I have always known at some level. My mom worked outside the home. She always had a job, and she's the only one of them with a retirement plan, other than Social Security. I lived in Lewistown as a teenager because my dad always loved Montana, and my mom followed him there for a few years. A few years ago, he bought a house in Denton, Montana, which is north of Lewistown. People ask me, why Denton? And I don't know, other than my dad loves the area. And he's come every summer for the last few years and spent a few months there. My mom has visited, but wisely is not interested in spending months there. That may be another reason why they get along well, because they spend so much time apart. My dad has been to Montana every year since 1957, except for the year he had lung cancer, and he couldn't come this year. I sense a desperation from him to have one more trip out west. But they are great examples of what not to do about aging. So far, there are 3 lessons I've learned from them about what not to do. They did a lot of things right, but their last quarter is a big fat mess for their children. Their home for the last 35 years has been an apartment attached to the back of a 3-bedroom house. My mom claimed the attached garage, and my dad built a barn that has 2 stories. And it also has a 2-story apartment behind it. My dad is a hoarder. His barn is beyond description. It's 2 stories tall, could probably hold at least 4 cars, but there is stuff stacked floor to ceiling and in the middle. And so is part of the apartment next door. They just moved from this house to a facility that varies from independent living to almost like a nursing home, depending on what they need. It's really a lovely place, although they don't like it right now. My mom is not very good at setting boundaries. And what I thought about this morning, she doesn't set boundaries, and then all of a sudden she's really mad and is yelling at people, including my dad mostly. There are so many situations where it's easy to be angry or upset at someone who's being a butt. But those around them too often don't say something, and in that way, we all have culpability too. So, here's a funny story about my dad. When I was there in October, he was in rehab, and he learned to use a wheelchair pretty good, and he wheeled himself into the bathroom, came out, and he talks loud, even though my mother's the deaf one. So he yells from the bathroom, "Cheryl, I can't pull up my pants!" And so he wheels himself over, and I help him pull up his pants, and now here's the funny part. He said, in the next sentence, my nephew was there too, "Cheryl, I think I could get in my truck and drive to Montana later." And we all just busted out laughing. I said, "Dad, you can't pull up your pants." And all we could do, we just had to laugh, including my dad. He thought that was pretty funny. So I have these 3 lessons, but this might be the 4th lesson about being realistic about what you can and cannot do. So the first lesson is to move sooner than later. I live about 17 miles from my office, and there's nobody around me, and I do love it out there, but I'm not gonna wait till I'm 90 to move to town. It's too hard when you're 90. I'm gonna move a lot sooner. I don't wanna be out there all by myself if I'm not going to work pretty often. So, and I think I'll be more adaptable at 80 than 90-year-olds can be. So they go back to their house. My parents go back to the house. When I was there, I took my mom a couple times. Mostly she cried. And I didn't take my dad, so I don't know my dad's feelings. So that's one lesson. Move sooner than later. The second one that we talked about in that group, and I've kind of mentioned already, is clean up your stuff, your external stuff. Like my daughter was over, and I'm going through pictures to put them digitally, and I'm going to give my kids all a box of pictures. And she says, "Why are you doing that?" And I said, "So you don't have to do it later." And she goes, "Oh, okay." There's a lot of stuff in my dad's second house in Denton. Some good stuff, some not so great stuff. And that's not because my dad's a hoarder. The house came with a bunch of stuff. But because I'm the only kid here in Montana, it's gonna be my job to clean that up. My parents own 3 houses, 40 acres in northern Michigan, numerous vehicles, and a lot of stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's not, so it's gonna require a lot of sorting through. So the third lesson is to clean up your other stuff, meaning your internal stuff. It's okay to be messy, but there's a difference between being a human but not addressing your internal messiness. It's okay to have a problem, it's just really not okay not to take care of it. Whatever your personality, characteristics, or traits have been hard for others to live in, they'll become exaggerated as you age. So here's a couple of ideas to help that I'm using to help myself as my parents are a struggle and a blessing all at the same time. One, I've already mentioned, the compassion, being compassionate for yourself, for my parents. My parents are requiring a lot of patience because my mom doesn't remember why she has to come with me to the cable company because she's the only one that can sign. I need to remind her a few times. The second one I have down is about boundaries. I talk about boundaries a lot in my work. Brene Brown describes boundaries as the difference between okay and not okay. And when something's not okay, even when your parents are 90, in a kind way, it's okay to speak up and say, that's not okay. Because my dad likes to yell at people these days. The next idea is to plan. This is probably something that everybody could do, and that's plan for how you handle stress. I have ways that I manage stress or when I need to figure something out. I walk, I write, and I meditate. So make a plan. Know what your stress management plan is. When I get asked right now about how things are going, I don't talk much about my parents, though it's a stressful situation. It's just an ongoing stressful situation, and it just is what it is. Like I said, I live out by Canyon Ferry Dam, and owning a truck has made my life easier. The first 3 winters I lived out there, I toted 2 to 3 tons, which is 150 bags, of pellets in the back of my Jeep Wrangler. Maybe 15 bags at a time. Having a large capacity truck has been great. Well, to get to the point without the saga, it needs a new engine to the tune of $16,000. And I only paid a little bit more than that 6 years ago. I have to decide what to do. So I wrote, I went for a walk. I didn't really meditate, but I contemplated my choices. And I talked to some people because I needed some other people's wisdom other than my own. And I'm not spending that kind of money on that truck. I already have 1 ton of pellets in my house before the truck puked, and then my partner brought me another one. So this winter, I'm set. I'll figure out the rest as I go. This was my way to cope with the stress of my truck. So, just to kind of wrap things up, I believe the RE kids are going to talk about their bucket list. I love the idea that little kids are talking about a bucket list. And when someone called me and said, hey, is that part of the talk? I said, no, but it can be. So I'm really glad they're talking about this. It's great to start when you're young. And my parents were good at this. They traveled to many places, and sometimes not together. My dad's been to Africa a few times. My mom went with him once. My mom did cruises with girlfriends, went to Europe. My mom will go anywhere where there's a beach, as long as she doesn't have to go in the water. And they went on a trip with some friends in an RV and drove from Montana to Alaska. And they were still friends after they got back. So, and people who have sat with dying people say that dying people don't talk so much about what they did, but they do wish for what they hadn't done. So it's a good idea to reduce your regrets and do something on your own bucket list. The following is a couple of lists that I wrote down in 2020. Some of them my parents did, some of them they didn't do so much, but I asked them 4 years ago, what's your words of wisdom as you get older? I have recordings of them, and I got this idea from StoryCorps and NPR. And the recordings will be really important as we remember them. I wish I had recordings of my grandparents. So they'll be a joy later on. So in 2020, my mom's ideas for growing old are exercise and be active. When she retired, she was about 65, and she started an exercise group at her church that until just a couple of years ago, she was still leading. And now she mostly goes and eats lunch with them, not so much the exercise. Although on the phone, I'm usually asking her, have you done your squats? And usually she has. She said, have some hobbies, do things that you enjoy doing, pay attention to relationships with family and friends because they're important. And she said to take care of your body, which my mom is pretty good at doing. I like this one though. She said, you don't have to look and act like an old lady. So I think that's a great one. She's kept her faith, and she thinks that's important. She thinks planning your finances and not having debt was important. She wishes maybe she had a pet. She doesn't like dogs that shed and poop in the yard, but she might want a cat. She also said to go places and to try new things. And that's important when you're younger, because at 90, she doesn't really want to do that. So my dad's ideas from the same year And some of these, my dad he knows they're important, but he hasn't been able to do them. The first thing out of his mouth was move, even if it hurts. And he meant that in your mind and your body. He said, don't shy away from debate, although that is not me, but he likes to debate with people. He said, manage your medications, which he does pretty good at. He said, be realistic about what you can and cannot do. He thought he could drive to Montana. And he did that last year. A little scary. When I went this October, the whole side of his truck had been smashed because he'd been driving. Yeah. He said to be flexible in many ways, and he said to keep saying yes to life. He said, keep up your hand strength. My 90-plus-year-old neighbor that I live next door, I noticed that with her. He said, keep learning new things. And he said, force yourself to drink water. And eat in a balanced ways. This one just about cracks me up. He said, do what others tell you to do. Like my brother, who's a doctor and tells him how to be healthy, and his kids who tell him be nice. He doesn't do what others tell him to do at all. He said, be kind, grateful, count your blessings. He said, look for the good and always have a positive attitude. So if I call my dad now, and I know he probably doesn't feel good, but he'll say, oh, I'm good, everything's fine. And the last thing is, my dad has a couple people that he really likes to talk about, and one of them is Napoleon Hill. And his quote from Napoleon Hill that I'll end with says, ultimately, nothing matters. Sort of true, in the end. There's a whole lot that's not very important. Okay, we'll just have a couple of minutes for a silent meditation. Anybody have any thoughts or anything they want to say? I can do this.
Well, Cheryl, thank you for that guidance. But I have to admit, it makes me anxious. Because I feel like there are aspects of my life that I'm really not taking care of. I'm really not minding certain business, and there's a part of me that just feels like, oh, trust in the future, trust in God, whatever. And then there's that other part of, yeah, but what about blah, blah, blah. So I just thought I'd say that.
So this conversation, or your sermon, comes at a really interesting time. This Wednesday, one of my employees and friends and someone I love very much passed away. David Spencer, who was known as the book guy here in Helena. And I was the last to be with him on Tuesday night, and I found him on Wednesday morning. And I think one of the pieces of advice that I can give others is to tell people what you want. Let someone know what your wishes are, and even better, write it down. And the messiness piece is really, that's an interesting thing. The other role that I play is as an executive director of an art museum. And I cannot tell you, we probably get 3 to 5 calls or visits a week from children whose parents have passed and they don't know what to do with their stuff. Your kids don't want your things. I'm just saying it right now. They don't know what to do with all of your things, and they want to honor you, and there's a lot of guilt around what to do with things that they know were important to you, but they either don't have space or it doesn't have the same meaning to them. It's an interesting role. And ultimately, when it is said and done, it doesn't really matter. Your legacy is who you were, and that string that connects us all together, even though we all think our things are really important.
In the group last spring, some people wrote their own obituaries. I think it was a really good exercise. And we also talked about how we wanted people to do after we were dead and what we wanted to do. So that was an important part of what we did this spring.
What is the greatest gift you can leave for your family and your friends? I mean, that's the question I frequently ask. What is the greatest gift I can leave? It ain't money.
So I want to know, is there any particular trick to getting it completed? I don't know. Checklist, got it, didn't do it. Working on it.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that one. That's probably an individual thing. That was also part of the group, with some accountability to come back again later and say, okay, what'd you do or what didn't you do? We had fun. We were talking about death and dying, but we had fun.
I got important stuff done.
We did, yeah. We had people attorney come and talk to us, and a doctor, Jessica, came and talked with us. It was good. I added the neighbor business for one of our group members. Okay. Now we're going to sing the closing hymn out of the Open Your Heart Songbook, number 13. It's on page 13. Thank you for jumping in and leading, Judy and Mackenzie. I appreciate it. Charlotte's kept me on task too, reminding me of all the things that I could forget to do. So now we're going to extinguish the chalice and we'll read the closing together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So this is the end of the YouTube recording.